Welcome, folks, to episode number 47 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast, the podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today again with all three of the old men, Tom Ladiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. Well, our Cougars finished out the regular season with a record-setting 14th consecutive conference road win, 65-61 over Baylor and Waco. Sampson's Cougar teams just never let up, even though they had already wrapped up a share of the regular season title 3 games prior. Now comes what I'll call kind of a somewhat meaningless Big 12 tournament to me, where there's really nothing left to gain and all to lose with risk of injury going into the real tournament. At this point, we already know we're playing Colorado in the Big 12 tournament, so we'll preview the next game and project out how we think, or at least hope, the tournament will play out. So this week, the three old men will cover the Big 12 tournament in anticipation of the big episode next week as we break down the brackets for the real March Madness tourney. So let's get into it, guys. In dissecting our win against Baylor, let's begin with a post-game analysis of the workman-like win in Waco to end the regular season. Then we'll transition to a more free-flowing discussion on the conference tournament, what you're expecting to see from a results perspective, and what each of you are expecting out of the Cougar squad in the prelude to March Madness. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in the Baylor game?
The big thing was the motivating factor for the Cougs, a chance to go 10-0 on the road. Check mark, did that. 19-1 in conference, and with the conference going from 20 games to 18 next year, that 19 win season is going to be hard to replicate. There might never go back to a 20 game schedule. So, there were a lot of things that was there to motivate U of H. Plus, you got the Hall of Fame coach over there to motivate you if you don't play very well. So, kind of got off to, I wouldn't say a rocky start, but I think we were down 29-26 at half. Win the game 65-61. What I got out of this was LJ was on fire. There was some boos for LJ going back to Baylor. I don't think they were, just a chorus of boos or whatever, but they were loud enough for him to hear them, and he definitely heard them, and he was just literally on fire. A few other things got from this game. Everybody came out pretty much unscathed. The TA came out. It looked like he tweaked his Achilles a little bit in the second half, but as far as I know, he's good to go for the tournament. And then stuff that's not basketball related, you got the frosty handshake between Kelvin and Scott Drew. I got some theories on that. I wouldn't say I'm a conspiracy theorist, more like a conspiracy realist, but yeah, very, very frosty handshake between Kelvin and Drew, which kind of raises some eyebrows there. You had Quantis yelling at a Baylor assistant during a timeout. I don't know what's going on there. You had Milos draining the three and then getting that chicken shit tea for saying something to the bench. What gets me is, when you go for a shot and the opponent's bench, they can say whatever they want. When you're going for a shot, they never get teed up. And then as soon as you clap back at them, they slap the tee on them. So I thought that was pretty bad. And then you had Baylor 6'10" injured center wearing red sweatpants on the Baylor bench. So I don't know. And then Kelvin and all the assistants had more than just a good game. Hope you're well. Little chat with the handshake line. So make of it whatever you want. Yeah, that's about all I have on this. You had Juwan getting fouled late in the game. Baylor needed the ball. They didn't get the ball. They needed a foul. So before the ball was even brought in, away from the ball, they pretty much just mugged Juwan.
What a chicken shit move, right?
And not a flagrant, but Juwan, he steps up to the free throw line, makes both free throws. I think after he had missed 3 in a row. So overall, big point. 10-0 on the road. We went 19-1 in conference.
Yeah, fantastic. Bill, how about your views of the Baylor win from a player's perspective?
Before I get into Baylor, one quick mention. I know a few podcasts ago I wanted to offer condolences to Alvin Franklin's family and everything, and having known Alvin, wanted to mention that. Tonight we'll go to the opposite end of the spectrum. I want to congratulate Coach Quantis White, who accepted the position at UL Lafayette.
Yeah, here.
Great accomplishment. Obviously, best wishes, best of luck at ULL and ULA or Ulala and
yeah, we're gonna miss him.
hopefully we'll see him if and when he brings the squad to Fertitta.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a game. This was a game, Baylor, where I mentioned that this might be closer than one might think, as Baylor only lost 2 home games this entire year, and quite honestly, they didn't disappoint. Although I think in the first half we definitely helped out. Tom, you mentioned it. We only scored 26 points, and we were down 3 at halftime. The positives were Uzan, who was solid in the first half, and absolutely Cryer, who went 5 of 5 from beyond the arc, and quite honestly kept us from being down a fair amount more. The negatives were in the first half were Sharp, who looked largely non-existent, and then most of all Roberts, who went 1 of 3 from the field, turned the ball over 3 times. He just, I don't want to say he looked like he didn't want to be there, but he really was not at all aggressive in the first half. And I listened to Calvin's post-game press conference, and he addressed the team in the first half, addressed Jawan's 5 turnovers for the game, and he said that he, in language that could only stay in the locker room, told the players to start going through Roberts to get the ball inside, because if the shots from the outside weren't fouling, then start to get the ball inside everybody and shoot free throws. If we're not scoring and not hitting shots, hopefully we're getting fouled and we can go to the line. And fortunately, the players absorbed everything Calvin said. Roberts got a ton of touches coming out of the half. He finished with 11 points, 10 boards. He was 3 of 5 from the field in the second half, and 2 massive free throws, which Tom mentioned, and I'll get to a little bit in a second. But the other star was certainly Sharp. He was focused clearly on getting to the hoop and being aggressive on both ends. He took 8 shots. He went 4 of 5 from the line all in the second half, 11 points, 5 boards. And we're going to absolutely need that from Sharp in the NCAAs. Yeah. What I want to also mention were 2 absolute horse blank calls late in the game that could have really turned things. First involved Sharp, who, even though Edgecombe scored 23 points and had a great game, Sharp really, he was down his defensive stance. He was making Edgecombe work for everything that he got. So, I guess hats off to Edgecombe because he was able to score 23 despite being defended really well. But late in the game, Sharp was standing perfectly straight up on an Edgecombe shot. He got just drilled in the face. The refs, of course, called the foul on Sharp. And he wasn't leaning into Edgecombe. He literally was straight up. There was no contact. Yet the call's made on him. They go to look at the play to see if there might be a flagrant on Edgecombe. And I kind of did not think that there was one, but I also said that there's no way they're going to call a second flagrant on him. They'd called one earlier in the game on him. They weren't going to do it again. And of course they didn't. And then he gets to go to the line and hits a couple of free throws. And I just thought that was just a brutal call. Worse was the nonsense with Roberts at the end. I mean, there's under a minute left. We're inbounding the ball. We're only up by 2. And we run a good play. Cryer breaks free, gets the ball. They foul him instantly. And you're thinking, great, one of our 2 best free throw shooters. He's been hot the entire game. There's no way he's gonna not make at least 1 of 2, and more almost assuredly 2 of 2. He gets fouled, and you're thinking, yeah, perfect. Except that the refs call a foul on Jalen Selenstein for an outright assault on Roberts that happened on the other side of the court, nowhere near the ball. And even our analytics guy and former U of H tennis star Steve Chang would agree that was a blatantly intentional foul, and that it should have been 2 shots of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
The beauty of all this is that our worst free throw shooter, statistically at 62%, Roberts, ends up going to the line because that's who they went after. And he just drills both free throws, just shoving it in Scott Drew's face and ending the game effectively. Like you said, Tom, 19-1 in the conference, 10-0 on the road. What an incredible year in the Big 12.
Yeah. It was fitting, right, for Roberts to end the game with those 2 free throws. It was awesome. I mean, looking at it from an advanced analytics perspective, it was as we expected. Baylor was playing hard from the get-go and kept that intensity through the entire game as they were trying to end on a positive note after winning 2 of the preceding games. They actually took a slight lead going into the half, as we had talked about, 29-26, so we knew we were getting Baylor's best shot. This was a huge game for Baylor coming into the game. They were safely in the tourney, but still somewhat on the bubble if they didn't end the season well. So they were motivated to try to get that top 5 win to end their regular season, to have some momentum going into the postseason. But that wasn't going to happen against Coach Sampson. We limited them to a lowly 41.5% effective field goal percentage, 31% from 3-point range, and 37% from 2-point range. Just crazy numbers. Baylor just couldn't get their offense on track versus our stifling D. The only thing that kept things close was our nemesis, Norchad Omier. He's just relentless. Offensive rebounding, where he had 9 by himself, and freshman Edgecombe with his slashing to the basket. For us offensively, we just played our game relying heavily on Cryer in the first half until the rest of the team woke up in the second. We ended the day basically around our averages from a shooting percentage. Only thing I could pick on offensively was rebounding, where we're slightly off on offensive rebound rate at 30% for the game. Key stat of the day that ultimately kept the game as close as it was around Baylor's offensive rebounding, where they were at almost 45% for the game. But we'll take the 4-point win and move on. Now let's get to the Big 12 tournament, and specifically our game with Colorado first. So Bill, why don't you go first from a player's perspective, previewing our game versus Colorado?
Okay, tomorrow, 2 o'clock, we play the lowest rated team in the Big 12, Colorado. I know that the game will be over by the time you hear the podcast, but just so I don't get on next time and say that I predicted the score exactly right or something to that effect, I'll do a quick preview now. First of all, I am stunned that West Virginia fell apart down the stretch and lost to Colorado today. I'm absolutely just stunned by that. You know, I want to say, make no mistake, that at 19-13 and 10-10 in conference, that this loss does not keep West Virginia out of the NCAAs, and I do believe that they're going to get in. But it you know, they were probably a 10 seed going in. They could drop to the 11 line now, an 11, and have to play a play-in game. I mean, it's not good timing for a loss, especially a loss to Colorado, who has played better down the stretch and the second half of the season for sure, and been more competitive. But for West Virginia, this was ill-timed. In U of H's loan meeting with Colorado, which was on the road in Boulder, we won by 10, 69-59. It was a closer than expected game, largely because their point guard, Julian Hammond, went absolutely crazy, scored 22 of their 59. No one else on the team exceeded 6 points, and he hit 5 of 7 threes against us. First, there's no way we lose this game tomorrow. No chance, none. But to help get rest for our 7 to 8 key players, we need to defend Hammond. We need to defend Jakimovsky. We need to defend Elijah Malone and R.J. Smith. Hammond only scored 8 points today versus West Virginia and was held to 1 of 5 from the field. And granted, he was playing against a phenomenal point guard, Javon Small. Jakimovsky led led CU with 17 shots attempted, and CU's top two scorers today, 6'10 center Malone and 6'3 guard Smith, came off the bench. Roberts, when we played them the first time, Roberts went 9 of 11 for 20 points, and all our starters but Tugler hit double digits. We killed them on the boards. We're a significantly better team inside. We're bigger, we're more aggressive. So we go inside, we're going to dominate this game. Quite honestly, I have us winning big like I thought we'd do the first time, 70-49.
Wow. Yeah. Big one. How about you, Tom, from a coach's perspective?
This will be Colorado's third game in 3 days, so you think their legs would be dead, but you just never know. NC State won five games in 5 days last year to win the ACC tournament, so these things are weird. Colorado, this is their only chance to make the NCAAs is to go through and win 5 games in 5 days. Bill mentioned we played him in Boulder last time. This time it'll be a neutral court in Kansas City. Their post player, Malone, you can call him Post Malone, I guess. He's not a bad player. Came from the D2 ranks. I think he came from Grace College. I can't remember, somewhere in the Midwest. I don't think he's the most athletic guy. He's got soft hands. He's got a nice little touch there. But as we all know, we've been following the Cougs for a while here. We're going to double the post and make a passer out of him. So we'll have to do a good job of getting the ball out of his hands, but also then again making a rotation so Hammond doesn't have those open shots. You can say Hammond went ham today, or Hammond went ham against us that first game.
Yeah.
So they're 2-0 the last couple of days. It's a new season for them, but I just don't think they have enough to win. Like Bill said, I think it was disappointing effort today for West Virginia. Yeah. I can see Colorado beating Oklahoma State, but I kind of figured West Virginia would win this game. But, yeah, just kind of disappointing performance by them. So tomorrow, what do we got? 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock.
Yes.
And like we said, we should be rested. We should be ready. And I think we take care of them by double digits.
Yeah. When you look at it from an advanced analytics perspective, Colorado's been really a really mediocre team all year, though they gave us battle earlier in the year in Boulder, as we talked about with Hammond going off. Colorado's now 85 in Ken Palm coming off their surprise win over West Virginia. From an advanced analytics detailed stats perspective, Colorado's number 143 in adjusted offensive efficiency and number 55 in adjusted defensive efficiency, while we've settled in at number 9 in adjusted offensive efficiency and moved up to number 2 now in adjusted defensive efficiency. So on paper, this should be a reasonably comfortable game. Colorado offensively, quite honestly, is just a terrible shooting team this year. They're 181 in effective field goal percentage, number 349th in turnover percentage, and number 212th in offensive rebounding. So what they try to do to compensate is taking it to the hoop and getting fouled, where they convert free throws at a reasonably high rate at 75.2%. On D, Colorado's a little bit better, but aren't exceptional at any particular area. Some of their gaps on D are around not turning teams over at number 241st in turnover percentage D, and defending their three-point line, where they're a terrible 183 in three-point percentage defense. So overall, we're a bad matchup for Colorado, especially on a neutral court, and Colorado having already played 2 games in 2 days. So I'd say expect the Cougs to make life miserable for Colorado with our stifling D, and expect us to challenge them by spreading our shooters around the arc and pounding it inside to Roberts posting. Based on the metrics, this is actually projected to be a 16-point win for the Cougs based on Ken Palm, but because of what we talked about earlier with tired legs and with Colorado playing 3 days, 3 games in 3 days, I'm predicting also a big win, like yourself, Bill. 72-52, 20-point win for the Cougs. So as we continue to look towards March Madness, how about we all look into the overall outlook for the Big 12 tourney? And Tom, why don't you start with your coach's view on how you think the Big 12 tourney plays out for us after this next game, as well as overall with the other teams?
Well, Iowa State played today. They picked up a win against Cincinnati, but you also had Keyshawn Gilbert and Taman Lipsey also tweak groans again. Gilbert didn't play second half. Lipsy said he's good to go tomorrow, so that should be something to keep an eye on. They got BYU tomorrow. Supposed to be a neutral court, but make no mistake, this is going to be an ISU home crowd. They're going to be out in droves. I'm not sure how much of the arena they'll have, but my guess is they'll have 10,000 or so in that. I think it holds like 17,000. So, BYU's got their work cut out for them, even though Iowa State's coming off a game yesterday. So that's in BYU's advantage. What was it, about a week or so ago that BYU beat ISU at Hilton? So there'll be a little bit of motivation for ISU. I just saw an interview with Taman Lipsy, and when the reporter asked him about the BYU game, he wasn't cocky or anything, but he just had like a little grin, like, yeah, kind of like us in Kansas last year when they beat us in Allen. And some of the players, they had the date, I think it was like March 3rd. They would just say March 3rd, when somebody asked them about Kansas, and we know what happened there. So that's the top part of the bracket. So if we beat Colorado, we'll be looking at the winner of Iowa State and BYU. And that should be a heck of a game tomorrow at 11:30. So by the time this podcast gets out, that game will be played. Looking at the bottom of the bracket, top of the bracket, I see us playing Iowa State in the semis, and it's gonna be a tough one, but I think we pull it out and make the final. Bottom part of the bracket, games being played right now. Baylor's up on K-State, so you're probably looking at Baylor and Texas Tech. I have Texas Tech winning that one. UCF and Kansas, that's going to be a home game for Kansas, so I see Kansas moving on, playing Arizona, and then I think Kansas beats Arizona just because it's the home court, and Kansas are a bunch of front runners. They play good at home.
Yeah.
So you got a Kansas-Texas Tech final at the bottom of the bracket, but I say Tech wins that, and it'll be a Tech University of Houston final, and with the Cougs coming out on top and hanging another banner.
All right. How about you, Bill? What's your prediction or forecast of the Big 12 tourney?
As you'll hear in a second, thanks for that prediction, Tom. I might as well go home. To be honest, I really don't care about the rest of the tournament after we destroy Colorado.
I agree.
I think, Tom, you said it was going to be, you're expecting a really good game. I think unless a miracle occurs, Iowa State avenges their loss to BYU and will definitely play us in the semis. I realize that an extra day of rest isn't a ton, but if Iowa State gets out to a lead on us and we're able to sit everyone maybe after the first half and then avoid playing another game on Saturday, I'd be ecstatic. We're a 1 seed, likely the number 3 overall, and ISU right now they're kind of right on the 3-4 seed bubble. So this is a much bigger game for them.
True.
Go ahead and play to win the battle, while we get ready and stay healthy for winning the war, and which is the NCAAs. And so I'd be okay with us, losing to Iowa State, because it's not going to affect anything with us. With that said, I do think we play hard and compete, and we win the road game against Iowa State in Kansas City.
Wow, you too.
I think we play either Tech or, and thanks again, Tom, Kansas. Likely Tech in the finals, and beat them with, in quotes, their full team playing, leaving no question in the minds. Leaving no question in the minds or what little minds there happens to be of the Tech fans as to who the best team in Texas absolutely is. I just think that as long as the games are reasonably close, Kelvin's going to coach to win. And I don't necessarily like this scenario, but I see it playing out that way. I think it's going to be a really, really good game in the semis, but I just think that Tech has the better players and the better team, and I think they beat Kansas, and then I think we beat Tech in the finals. So sorry to reiterate everything you just said, Tom, but unfortunately, we're on the same page there. I will say this. My main focus right now is not on the Big 12 tournament.
Yep.
It's squarely on the Big East. Gonzaga, who I was a little concerned about,
Big East?
And I thought is now probably a 7 seed after they won the West Coast championship last night.
That's good.
So I don't see them matching up against us, but UConn does concern me as a potential 1-8 matchup in the second round. I think if UConn tomorrow is going to have what should be, although they've had some bad losses this year, it should be an easy win. And if they can, then on Friday, if they can get by Creighton in the semis, I think they move down to a 7 as well. Obviously, a win over St. John's or Marquette in the final seals that. And Connecticut's not an 8 seed, and we don't have to think about them at all. They're healthy right now. And I still think we beat them if we play them. We're the better team, but I just as soon see them somewhere else. And even if they're in our region, if they're a 7 instead of an 8, then let them make their way through everyone until they meet us in the Elite 8. So, yeah, I am a little more focused on that because I like our matchups against some of the other potential 8 seeds, and I once again don't particularly care about the Big 12 tournament because once we beat Colorado, we're
yeah. I heard excuse me guys, but I heard Kelvin on his radio show, and I wouldn't say it was a rant, but he basically just stated his dislike of the tournament. And I can understand. I mean, you just played a 20-game schedule, a grueling 20-game schedule, 2 games a week for 10 straight weeks, and then you come and he said verbatim, it's just a money grab. It's just for money. Why would you do something like this? I know back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, the ACC had a tournament, but that's back when only one team from each only one team from each conference made the NCAAs, and the winner of the ACC tournament, was the team that went. So there's kind of some tradition there, but what's the purpose? What's the point of these games? Having said that, though, Kelvin is a competitor, and if it's it's in his DNA. I mean, if it's a game of tiddlywinks or backgammon or whatever you want, pinochle, he's gonna try to win.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a double-edged sword because you want to win, but the best thing for some of these teams right now is to rest up and to heal and just kind of recharge the batteries a little bit. I mean, you look at Iowa State today. Lipsy tweaks that groin again. Gilbert doesn't play in the second half because of the groin. There's nothing really to gain except for a trophy and a banner and everything to lose as far as injury goes. What would happen if Flagg goes down, Cooper Flagg goes down in the ACC tournament? Janai Broom goes down in the SEC tournament. And it would cost them their chances for a national championship. And it can cost us too if we happen to lose someone like Sharp or Milos or Cryer. So I don't know what the answer is. Be better off just playing a preseason tournament.
Yeah. For me, I mean, you guys know, I hate the postseason conference tournaments. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you throw the games. I actually hope that we play our normal rotation versus Colorado, work out some of the kinks on offense from the Baylor game, assuming we win, which we will. Next game, I'd like to obviously still play to win. However, I'd like the lineups to be different. I'd like our backups to play roughly half the game. Still coach to win, but just play more of the kids. Now, I know that might be tough, especially with Arsenault's injury at this point. I don't know how many minutes he can actually play. But when I look at the draw, I'm actually going to predict some differences in the Big 12 tournament from you guys. I agree. Us and Tech will make the semis. However, I'm going to say Arizona upsets KU to make the semis. And then
they're favored. They're the higher seed.
They're the higher seed, yeah. Though it's kind of like you guys had both highlighted, kind of like a road game, right? Being in Kansas City. But
agreed.
I just think they've been playing better than KU. And I know both of you guys have picked ISU to beat BYU in the quarters. But just to be different, I'm picking the hot BYU team to beat ISU again. But they're also the higher seed. But I think they're the dogs, right? Based on the line. Yeah.
Yes.
Now it's interesting. I took a closer look at BYU because they've been really hot as of late. And when I look at Haslam metrics, they show that BYU has started to play slightly better D, especially over the last 7 games. Though if you look at their stats over the course of the season, they've been reasonably flat. So you can't really pin it on their defense, but it's actually on offense that you see an uptick. Young has figured out some slight nuances on offense that has caused their 3-point shooting to start going up as the season has gone on. Slight improvements in turnover percentage, even though they're still not great. They're actually terrible on that front, but just slightly better than they were at the beginning of the year.
And they had 29 against ISU a week or so ago.
Oh, did they? Terrible.
Won the game.
Yeah. And then they've got slight improvements on free throw rate. So they've been taking it to the hoop a little bit more than earlier on in the season, all of which has actually resulted in a very noticeable trend upwards in terms of efficiency on offense since January, in comparison to the first half of the season when they were still trying to figure things out, or Young was still trying to figure out the college game. From there, I actually wouldn't mind, or I'm actually even hoping that BYU, or if it's ISU, that we actually lose in the semis. We play hard, figure out our kinks, we lose, and get to rest our players. And then on the other side, I think Tech's going to squeak by Arizona, and then Tech wins the conference tournament. Now, after the tournament, is you guys are starting to look at potential seedings in the real tournament at the conclusion of the Big 12 tournament. I think there's a consensus that the Big 12 gets 8 teams in since they kind of played itself out of the possibility of getting in. How do you guys see the Big 12 seeding of teams? What kind of respect are we going to get as a conference? How many teams do you guys think will actually get into as a top 4 seed? I mean, Bill, what's your take on it? What do you think when the real brackets come out? How many are we going to get in the top 4?
We'll be in the top 4. Tech will be in the top 4. Iowa State will be in the top 4.
Yep.
That's it.
Oh, okay. So you don't think Arizona is going to make it up?
I think Arizona, if Arizona's, well, I have them losing to Kansas, so I'm just going to stick with that and assume that's the way it goes. And if that's the case, I think they're a 5. Now, if they go through and they beat Tech, I think maybe even if they don't win the conference tournament, if they beat Tech but get to the finals,
they play Kansas though, right? Arizona.
Or UCF, Kansas.
Yes. I'm assuming they've got to win that game.
Yeah. Okay.
If they want any shot at a 4, so I'm saying they have to win that game.
Got it.
And then I think they have to beat Tech as well.
Oh wow. Okay, so they have to win the tournament to get a.
Well, no, they're on that side of the draw. They'd be playing either us, Iowa State, or BYU in the championship.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So
right.
I think that if Arizona, if they get to the championship, I think a win over both Kansas and Tech helps their cause significantly.
Yeah.
And maybe they do become a 4, but I think they've got to win both of those to do so.
Okay.
By the way,
yeah.
Just real quickly, I forgot to mention it when we were predicting the Big 12, but I did think that Kansas State would upset Baylor this evening. And,
did you?
I could see that with a minute to go in the first half, Baylor's up by 15.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So much for that.
Yeah.
So much for anything I predict.
Tom, how about yourself? How do you see
speaking of K-State, K-State peaked about a month or so ago when they were winning, and we were all saying, hey, they're playing like a top 10 team and all that, but it was a flash in the pan, and then they went back down to the mean. So, and I don't know, unless they make a really good comeback here, they're down 15 right before halftime to Baylor, so I don't see them pulling that one out. But back to the original question, I see U of H, Tech,
Yeah.
and Iowa State is getting seeds 1 through 4.
Okay.
I don't put Arizona in there because I think Kansas is going to be UCF. It's going to be a home game.
Yep.
And like I said before, many times before, Kansas, they're front runners. They're a totally different team at home than they are on the road. And then I think they're buoyed by the home court. They beat Arizona. Arizona travels pretty well, but they're going to be drowned out by KU fans. And then
I agree.
I do think Kansas will lose to Texas Tech. So that puts Arizona out of the running as far as I'm concerned. But you never know.
Of course,
There's
Kansas,
all sorts of data out of there. And then, for every person you ask, they're going to tell you something different. And, who knows? The committee gets in there and
yeah,
they look at the data, all that, and then it comes down to humans making the decision after all as much data as they have. So there's going to be a little bit of bias in there, and nobody knows what the biases might be, but that's the way
other
I look at
thing,
it.
Tom, is that last year, and it's a different team this year, although maybe results-wise not really, but last year Kansas was a much higher seed going into the first round of the Big 12 tournament, and they got absolutely annihilated.
Yeah.
So you never know with Kansas. They've certainly been
who was it that beat them last
year
in the Big 12 tournament? Who was it? Was it Cincinnati that beat them?
I don't
remember who beat them.
I think you're right. Think you're right.
Yeah. No, they've been definitely
don't get me wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. If UCF beats Kansas tonight, hey.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I think Kansas beats UCF, and I think Kansas beats Arizona, and I think they have a really good game with Tech, as I mentioned. But
if they don't,
it's in
I'm
the
happy.
back of my mind that Kansas could go down tonight.
Yeah, we'll see. When I look at it, I'm also thinking UH is a number 1. I think Tech and ISU end up on the 3 line, though Tech has an outside chance, depending on how they do in the tournament, to even sneak into the 2, possibly. I also think Arizona sneaks in as the final number 4 seed. Of course, I've got them basically going to the finals, or at least the semis, I think, for the tournament. If that happens, I think it sets the Big 12 up to make some noise in the tourney and maybe surprise some SEC teams along the way with all these write-ups around how dominant they've been this season. So for me, I'll be curious to see how Coach manages his lineups in the Big 12 championships from a minutes perspective. I'm hopeful that we're going to go into the tourney with fresh legs this year. And looking forward to next week when we do our big bracket episode, because I think that'll be a fun one. So anyways, that's it for our 47th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast. We're at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout next week to download and listen as our next big episode drops. Take care, everyone.